Everyone, including me, has been wrong about Agony this entire time. For years now, Agony has been believed to spawn in entities without any spirit attached. It turns out, this is completely untrue. In fact, Agony ends up being way simpler than any of us ever thought. Let me break it down for you. In the books, a scientist named Phineas Taggart tells us that our emotions linger in the objects around us. If you hug your plush, that plush will carry your love. Likewise, if you cry into your pillow will be charged with the energy of your sadness. But what Phineas discovered is that of all these emotions, Agony was unique. If agony and intelligence were ever combined, this would cause the paranormal. To quote the book, you can take a saturation of agony, add any kind of intelligence, even an artificial one, and they will combine together to transmute the energy of emotion into the energy of physical action. This, I believe, is what explains what people call haunted objects. And that's the big thing we've all missed. In order for a haunted entity to exist, there needs to be intelligence.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal.
I know this whole thing might sound confusing, but it's really extremely simple. Agony plus intelligence equals haunted entity. Anytime this condition is met, you will get haunted creatures. In hindsight, this makes a lot more sense. We don't have agony creatures spawning from every teary pillow in the world. It needs a combination of both conditions to be met. We see this condition met in the games. The souls of the children, combined with the tragic emotions of their murder, causes them to haunt the animatronics. What about the creatures from Fazbear Frights? Well, as it turns out, every story in Fazbear Frights is caused by Andrew and William spreading to everything in the Fazbear Distribution Center. The conditions are met there too. My favorite twist on this is the Mimic. When Edwin lost his son, he bashed the Mimic's head in, pouring his grief and rage into it, and because AI counts, the Mimic is now haunted. Now, why do I bring this up? Well, there are many very popular theories that don't use agony correctly. For example, there's a theory that the Fredbear plush came to life from the crying child's agony, that crying into it all the time brought it to life. This isn't possible, not without a soul at least. But more importantly, this has to do with the shadows. The most accepted theory regarding the shadows is that they just appeared one day after one of the tragedies, the biggest piece of evidence being a line from Shadow Freddy himself.
I am your wickedness, made of flesh.
As if he is just a manifestation of the tragedies. Agony just spawned him in. I gotta admit, this was convincing, but like I just explained, we now know this is not how it works. There needs to be a mind attached. Whether that mind is a ghost or an AI, there needs to be intelligence. And what if I told you FNaF AR gives us a name, and you're really not going to like it? The name associated with the shadows is Cassidy. I have reason to believe that Golden Duo, the theory that both the Crying Child and Cassidy possess Golden Freddy, was half true. They're both tied to the same suit, but they both appear as different ghostly entities. Now I know, the last time I tried to say this, a lot of people didn't like the idea. Heck, I don't know if I like the idea. If it were up to me, I'd have things switched. In every other universe, the fifth child is Golden Freddy, so that would imply Golden Freddy is Cassidy. Meanwhile, FNaF World's Broken Jaw Shadow Freddy with the tagline, "I will eat your soul," really implies Shadow Freddy is the Crying Child. This is much more clean to me, and I would rather run with this, but theorizing isn't about what we want, theorizing is about figuring out what Scott wants. Which brings me to the recent release of the Phone Guy book the week before. In this book, there are several moments dedicated to identifying the children in each animatronic. But when we get to Golden Freddy's, it's not what you would expect. Ralph listens to a recording of the Big Bite, but when the recording ends, he still hears the child crying from behind him, in which he is then bitten himself. Very straightforward, the Crying Child is 100% in Golden Freddy in some way. A lot of people have tried to attest this to Shatter Victim, the theory that the Crying Child is split between all of the animatronics, but let's face it, that's just not what's communicated here. Considering that Scott makes it a point to clarify things with each installment, and considering that Shatter Victim hasn't been acknowledged by most of the community, we'd definitely be able to see some hint that this is the case, but there's just nothing. And furthermore, there is not a single reference to Cassidy in this entire book. Now there is a point at the end of the book where Golden Freddy kills Ralph, and he hears a woman's voice as he is dying, telling him, "You did it, she's safe." But one, Cassidy is a little girl, not an adult woman, and two, this voice most likely belongs to Bronwyn Light, a woman who warned Ralph that his daughter was in danger. He doesn't remember her because his mind is literally being undone by Golden Freddy, to the point he can't even remember who he is. And look, people will argue to me again and again that the Crying Child wasn't a thing when Scott wrote the first 3 games. And you're right, but since the Crying Child's introduction, every identifying moment for Golden Freddy has relentlessly been a reference to the Crying Child. It is undeniable that the Crying Child is Golden Freddy. At the very least, the answer is Golden Duo. And Scott wouldn't consider it a retcon either because there's nothing that actually contradicts there being another soul. But that brings me to my next point. There is undoubtedly a 5th missing child. The survival logbook reveals the name Cassidy in relation to the 5th gravestone. She was definitely stuffed into the Golden Golden Freddy suit. So why is she never the one referenced when Golden Freddy actually appears? Well, let's take a look at every time Cassidy has been referenced. In the lead up to FNaF AR, the first ever teasers for the game were uploaded by Reddit user 5541GGNIK001, and in these teasers, we see a phone receiving messages that say, "It's me." We later got an updated version of this teaser with more messages on this phone saying things like, "I will find you," sent by the initial C. In fact, that's not the only place this shows up. It's seen all over the television in the main trailer. It's very clear that Cassidy has a major role in this game. But where am I going with this? Well, right after the messages appear on the phone, a purple shadow is casted over it. Shadow Freddy. Notice the deliberate purple glow that came out of nowhere. That's not how shadows work. If there was a purple light behind him, it would cast like this. For it to appear like this would have to be intentional. And considering the very convenient placement of things perfectly lining up where they're supposed to be, I'd say that's very likely. But maybe you're still not convinced. Well, what many people don't know is that there's more to this teaser. Under this Reddit post, there is a passage about a few QA testers that left after something happened with, and I quote, "the shadows." To give you the full quote, some QA testers left as a result of a failed test case. Seems odd since it's their job to find those things, but our ghostly pale and surprisingly sweaty QA lead kept saying they're gone, lost to the shadows in every daily meeting since. Now, I might have shrugged this off as spooky wording if the game didn't come out and reveal Shadow Bonnie as a primary antagonist. It's very clear that the shadows were in fact the shadows, made up of some kind of shape-shifting soul identified to us as Dark Remnant. Do you see what I'm getting at? The shadows are officially made up of Dark Soul, have existed since the early days, and go by the signature letter C. I don't think there's any other conclusion we can come to but to identify the shadows as Cassidy. Even when you look at all the other times Cassidy has been name-dropped, Shadow Bonnie is always there. Cassidy is talking to the crying child about some kind of party for him. Shadow Bonnie is there, setting up the party. Cassidy was found in the files of Princess Quest, but may or may not actually be the princess. The enemies share a striking resemblance to Shadow Bonnie. And that is all without mentioning that the original scrapped design of Mexus had the same animations as Shadow Bonnie did in AR. I don't know what to make of that really. The point is, both Cassidy and the shadows have repeatedly been brought up in this new saga, which tells me, whether I'm right or wrong, we're primed for a reveal. One of these future games will give us the answer, and I'd be willing to bet the real golden duo has been these two all along. Hey, before you go, you may have heard that I'm working on a full revamp of my multiplayer FNaF game, Five Nights Together. Well, over on my Discord server, I'm giving people the chance to decorate their own arcade to be featured in the game. Head to the link in the description and enter today. And I'll see y'all next month with another video.